Hi, I'm Varun Haran. I'm Managing Director for Asia and Middle East with Information Security Media Group. I'm talking about the changing threat landscape and how information hidden in DNS traffic can help organizations identify attacks. And it's my pleasure to be speaking with Stuart Reed, who's VP of Product at Nominet. Hi Stuart, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, thank you.
So Stuart, can you do a quick rundown for me of how you see the threat landscape and why we are seeing the same kind of breach and attack repeated over and over again?
Well, I think it's a really good question. I think there's a couple of aspects to this. So firstly, that we're seeing, as you quite rightly see, a number of breaches that are taking place time and time again. A lot of them are hitting the mainstream media and press now as well. So we're starting to get a momentum of understanding within the market. But the threats and the threat landscape continues to evolve, continues to change. We see a lot more threats coming in on a continual basis. And if you couple with that with the fact that it's part of a wider digital transformation initiative that a lot of organizations are embarking on, a lot more of the day-to-day processes that we are reliant on are becoming digitized. So the benefits of those digital initiatives, those digital projects, those innovations also have an unintended consequence, which of course is that the attack vectors become broader, and so those threats can attack a much wider surface than they previously have done.
Right. So essentially what you're saying is more and more people are using IT, are getting digital, but that also means that more and more people are making the same mistakes.
Well, what it means is that, yeah, indeed, there's a lot more digitization, so there's a lot more inflection points in which threats can manifest themselves and cause harm to an organization. Interestingly, we recently conducted a survey as part of Nominet, which was called Life Inside the Perimeter, which is where we spoke to around about 400 CISOs, both in the UK and in the States. And one of the interesting things that came out of that is the fact that barely a third of them say they have enough resource to be able to effectively secure their organizations against the onslaught of attacks right now. So, in terms of the emerging threats and what that means is that CISOs increasingly are going to be needing to look to partners and cybersecurity partners particularly to be able to help them mitigate and to eliminate those risks from their networks.
The rest of them, right? So, what are some of the foundational controls that you find lacking when you look at a breached entity?
Well, as I mentioned before, the threat landscape continues to evolve, and with that there is a lot more sophistication in terms of the threats. But threats don't necessarily have to be complex in order to be successful. So getting the base layer of your security posture right is absolutely essential. So having that good foundational layer of insight and visibility across your network is really, really important. And the CISOs increasingly are moving from a point of, too much data, not enough information, to a point now where we're seeing a lot of information points from all the different point solutions that are being brought in to protect the overall security stack. But the stretched resources mean that they can't always mitigate or remediate against those at any one given time. And it's interesting, going back to our report, that we're seeing, broadly speaking, about 70% of those that are seeing that they've discovered malware on their networks that they don't really know how long they've been there. So, it's a real business problem and a real issue for CISOs in order to get that deep visibility across their networks in order to understand and also proactively mitigate the risks across them.
Right, and I think this is an interesting point to segue into what I mentioned during my introduction, which was information hidden in DNS traffic, right? And domain name server traffic. So we're not talking about domain name server DNS security, but information hidden in that traffic. What role can it play in security?
Well, so DNS is really interesting for two main reasons. So firstly, it's ubiquitous. So regardless of the size of your organization and regardless of the industry that you're in, if you're utilizing a network and if that's communicating to other networks, then it's reliant on DNS traffic in order to make those connections and make those flows. What's particularly interesting is that the source of information in there is far greater greater and far deeper than just those transactions that take place. There's actually a huge amount of information that goes just beyond the normal health and availability and health of your network, but it actually goes into providing much more granular information around some of the security risks or threats that could be within your network. So as you might expect, a lot of malware utilizes DNS as a way to be able to execute and cause harm.
Right.
So what we're able to do within DNS is understand those connection points that are being made from malware, and we're able to identify malicious intent. We're able to use that information to look for phishing attacks, and also interestingly being able to look for data loss within organizations as well, or data leakage. And there is a concept known as DNS tunneling, which is able to, the malicious actor is able to partition or cut pieces of information and put them into legitimate DNS packet, traffic packet information, and circumvent a lot of security installations that may already be in place, and effectively go under the radar and leak lots of sensitive information. Now, it's a lot more of a slower method than some other ways of extracting information, but what's very interesting about DNS, and also quite surprising, is that given the information it provides, it is still often overlooked in the security stack. So a lot of information that could be used to help CISOs and their teams identify and eliminate risks from their network, from the patterns that are within DNS, are often completely overlooked as part of their overall security posture.
It's fascinating. And let me come back to something you mentioned earlier about how the CISO and the security team is stretched, right? We are at the RSA conference 2019, and AI and ML has been a big buzzword. AI, ML, automation, orchestration. How much of a panacea do you think AI and ML is for the overworked security team?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. You go around the floors here at RSA 2019, and you'll be inundated with a number of different messages from lots of different vendors that are talking about artificial intelligence or AI or machine learning. And certainly, in terms of where the technology is, it can play an absolutely vital role in helping to secure an organization, particularly from a network perspective. But it needs to be in context of actually what that provides to a CISO. So it needs to be more than a buzzword. It needs to be part of the ingrained functionality that provides that level of security. So if you take DNS, for example, the application of machine learning, for example, is able to orchestrate and categorize all of that legitimate data, potentially billions of data points that are going to and from an organization over a period of time, and distill that down and cut through all that noise and pinpoint the areas that need further investigation, or areas that need to be eliminated from the network because they are malicious in their intent. And that really is harnessing the power of machine learning techniques, because you take away those vast amount of legitimate data that's going through the DNS channel and focus that down to the relatively small number but highly relevant or impactful pieces of malware that could cause catastrophic harm. That's almost impossible for one person to be looking at by themselves. So being able to orchestrate that information, categorize it into either malware or phishing, data loss or suspicious activity even, and also of course the legitimate traffic that's guiding past that, and then automatically applying some level of policy against each of those areas is really, really important for a CISO to be able to get a good visibility across their network infrastructures, but also helps them really focus on what's important for their security teams to focus on, especially in the context where they really don't have enough resources to fully secure their whole organization.
End to end, right? Thank you so much for that fascinating conversation.
Thank you very much.
So I was speaking with Stuart Reed, who is the VP of Product at Nominet. For ISMG, this is Varun, Haran. Thank you for watching.